Thank you. Yeah, so first, I wanted to thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think there were two reasons I was really looking forward to this meeting. And one of them was the last session with Fares, where we practiced Clerk and Fares talked about Clerk, and then we had this great discussion. And so this group has this spirit of actually thinking together, and I think that is something that we need so much, and I looked forward to have more of that. And another reason is that we have this visual tools group that I will tell a little bit about, that is going on in the last few weeks, and it is just not so much compatible in terms of time zone, and I hope to bring some of the discussions we're having at the visual tools group here to this time zones, and so it is this opportunity, and I'm so thankful for this. And maybe I'll tell a bit about myself. My name is Daniel. I'm my background is mostly math, and I do statistics mostly. And in the last few years, a little bit with Clojure. And nowadays, I work part-time at some data science team, but also do some consulting in Clojure. And I'm involved in this Clojure community together with Zach, where we are building at least building some parts of the Clojure data science ecosystem. And I think what we will explore today is part of that. And and what I hope to discuss today is this new tool, Clay, which is still work in progress, but I think it is kind of emerging to some clear idea of what it could be, and I hope to mostly share some thoughts with you and get some feedback, and so curious what you would think about it. What I hope to do is to do a short presentation and then explore something together, like look into an example together and then see where it takes us, if it makes sense, and then maybe have some discussion. Is it good? Or any thoughts about this? So maybe we will go through it and kind of try to briefly say what Clay is. Thank you. What Clay, this new tiny tool, is about. And Clay is not a big project. It is trying to be a tiny project. And what it tries to do is to create some thin layer of compatibility across a few of the more serious tools we have now in Clojure. And we are mostly looking into this field that some of us call visual tools. And by visual tools, we mean those tools that allow us to do data visualization and literate programming, this idea of kind of documenting our code or documenting with code. And these two things, data visualization and literate programming, they are often kind of bound together in the tooling layer, and there are different ways, as we know, for creating visual documents in Clojure. And you see, as I wrote here, I'm mostly now looking into connecting three tools or libraries, which are Portal, Clerk, and Skittle or Sittle. And maybe in a moment we'll comment about them. But that is kind of hopefully a beginning of a layer that offers some dialogue across different pieces of tooling. And as we said, this is part of the visual tools group exploration. This group, which is going on in the last few weeks, is a place for a few of us to think together and share our little experiments when we meet. And what I hope to think is whether we could make this somehow more accessible to the time zones of, East and Central Asia. So maybe that is something we could discuss later. Maybe we should have sessions on other hours. And I'm so much hopeful that some of you could be involved in that if you wish. So maybe let us start with a problem that we're trying to solve. And the problem is that we have amazing tools, right? And what I collected here is a few examples of visual documents created in different Clojure tools. And maybe let us just open one of them, this recent, outstanding color tutorial by our friend Tomasz. And it will open in a moment, I guess. It is a good example of something created in Clerk, this tool that Fares taught us about last time. And you see this visual document created by Tomasz has really wonderful, colorful, and interactive options to see tables and colors and plots and results, and also to document things in a very clear way. Really, really an amazing thing to read. And it was created with Clerk, and you see, to make it work with Clerk, some adapter was needed to say, okay, we have colors, we need to tell Clerk how to render them. And there is this nice function that Tomasz created, which has this cool symbol that says, okay, please render a color, right? So what it means is that some little adaptation was needed to make it render in Clerk. And I think that could apply to all the visual tools, all the visual tools demonstrated here, like OrgBabel that we also heard about last time, and others, where there is some little ceremony needed to make things work in a certain tool so that you could create your document. And if somebody is taking a visual document that's created in one tool, then they would have to adapt it a little bit, to just change the code a little bit so that it would work in another tool. And that is a trouble. And it is a trouble because we want the ecosystem to grow. We want more tools to emerge, but still we want the old notebooks to just work for people so that they could just pick old notebooks and use them with the tools they like today. And at the Clojure community, we have been trying, I must say, Tomasz, who has written so much of the existing visual documents in many, many topics, has been doing a lot, and others too. We have been trying to create tutorials and documents and examples and document our study groups. And we have been doing that in different tools. And I must say, we haven't figured out a way to actually make things grow so that we can keep using our documents. So that's the problem. Does it make sense? Do you see the problem here with the changing formats of many new tools? Yeah. So, and maybe that is the starting point. We want to somehow find a way to allow things to keep growing, but still have this stable situation where we can document things. And maybe I hope to look into this recent tweet by Paula, which is kind of related, this inspiring tweet by Paula a few days ago, which is saying, open source is about choosing whether, open source software is choosing to whether to work on the easy thing that people ask for today, or sink yet another day into the long-term project that users really need, right? And one thing I liked about this tweet is that Paula doesn't say which one is it. Paula doesn't say which of these two ways we should pick, the easy way or the long-term way. And these days I'm very much thinking about the easy near-term project that would kind of solve the problems for us now. And that is what this session is about, I think, for trying to find something that is easy but would work for us now, today. And you see, all of these amazing tools we have here, creating those amazing visual documents, all of them are actually solving hard problems. They are trying to make amazing user interfaces, and that is never easy, and that actually needs lots of innovation. And we have seen in the talk of Fares about Clerk that it has those very, very sophisticated ways of hashing and caching so that it could be very clever about keeping the whole notebook up to date. And that's a difficult problem. And I think in Note space, I know we have had difficult problems. In Oz, really amazing things are happening in actually making the UI work kind of in a robust way in different situations. Many of these tools are handling concurrency and other problems, and all of this is hard, and will be amazing tools in the future so that will solve hard problems. That is not what I'm trying to do now. Now I'm trying to create something easy that would hopefully be an answer to what we need now, that would allow us to finally have a place for documenting things that would be stable a long time. And thank you. Maybe I should kind of go to the chat and click this link that Adi shared, because it is so much relevant, right? Would you like to comment about it? Because I think it is so much to the point, right? Yeah, so, or maybe it speaks for itself, right? Or, yeah, because that's the situation, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, right, it is this trouble with standards, with the hope that we, maybe could kind of standardize things, but it is just creating more troubles. And it might be the case with this experiment too, of course. And it is maybe something we could discuss later, right? So what we'll see now is a certain layer of interaction that will allow us to work with different tools with the same notation. That's the idea, right? That we could write the same code and use it in different tools. And it is a community challenge to find a way to keep maintaining that so that tools will be able to grow. So maybe one way to think about the goals is this way, right? We hope to make it easy to share things that others could easily pick and use, right? So we want our tooling to be easy on both the sharing and the using part, right? And that matters, and that will kind of direct us in the coming weeks in what we are hoping to do with the tooling. We want visual notebooks to be very much accessible. And we want this compatibility we discussed, but we don't want full compatibility. We want it to make sense in common use cases. So the obvious things like tables and images and Vega plots, those obvious things that typically one may need in a visual notebook, those should work the same way for different tools in the same code. But this compatibility layer should never be perfect. It should not try to cover everything, because we want that in all use cases, one would be able to use their best preferred tool that might do something so special that wouldn't work in other tools. So we need this balance between common use cases and all use cases. Does it make sense? Or any comments about this idea? Yeah, thanks. So, and then we want it to grow. We want it to somehow, Yeah, thank you. We wanted to somehow be able to keep growing in a way that doesn't limit what we hope for in the future. And we cannot imagine what will happen in the future of tooling. For example, there is this Goldly tool, which is developed by our friend Florian, which is still under development. And when it is there one day, it will offer so many interesting ideas about notebooks and interactivity, which are not here today. And we want our thin layer to be able to accept such future ideas. And also, we want it to flow with the REPL. And what I mean by here is to create a layer of experience that doesn't change too much. The usual ways we use our editor and REPL for interactive development and exploration. So in this sense, it is a bit different from Clerk, for example, because Clerk is innovating and creating new semantics of how we dynamically grow a visual document. And here we are not trying to do that. We are trying to do something that is very much connected to the usual way of evaluating little pieces of code. So in this sense, it is a little bit opinionated in the form of interaction. And the stack of libraries that we're discussing here is actually, at the moment, 3 libraries. Kindly is about saying how different kinds of things should be used. Clay, which we will see mostly today, is about this dynamical workflow, listening to user evaluations and visualizing them in different tools. And VizCLJ, about our friend Ashima Panjwani, is about making visualizations easy and connecting some of the current Clojure libraries like Tablecloth and Hanami, connecting them in a certain layer that make things work easily. And so today we will focus on Clerk. Any comments or thoughts so far? So we will focus on Clay now. And yeah, so you see, what we will do, maybe I'll jump to the code. We will use this restart command. What this restart call does is restarting our tool with, so restarting Clay, this thin tooling layer, with the relevant tools that we may like to use with it for visualizations. And the tools we will look into are Portal, Clerk, and Skittle or Sittle. So Portal, probably many of you know, it's this data navigation, data visualization, dynamic tool, really amazing activity and so much attention from the maintainer and brilliant ideas and beautiful UI. And Clerk, that we have discussed, is this brilliant idea of visual notebooks of those with those ideas of hashing and caching and code analysis. And what is Sittle? How is it related? It is not a tool. It is an interpreter that allows us to write Clojure script in the browser in an easy way. And does anybody know, have you heard about it? Maybe you have, maybe it is part of the stack of libraries around the SCI, the small Clojure interpreter. And this one is about allowing to write Clojure script in plain HTML files as script tags, as one would do with JavaScript. So it allows us to create plain HTML files and connect to the whole JavaScript ecosystem in an easy way, which is in some senses easier than the usual Clojure script experience. And I've been using it to create, yeah, Adi, would you like to comment about it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just dropping messages in chat asynchronously. So we can always talk about this toward the end. But I thought, I mean, the just like lifting the interpreter out of whatever, like the small Clojure interpreter out of the experiments that Bogtooth has been doing has been it's it's like a genius move, because it opened up so many different things, right? Like it's at the core of phenomenally large amount of functionality that's available. And I feel that's also like a uh, it might provide some clue about how to go about the notebook problem itself. That we'll discuss that. I have like some recent thoughts, opinions, so we can talk about that later.
Fantastic. That helps so much. And yeah, I hope we can discuss it. So you see, it is somehow liberating. It allows to use the usual practices of easy JavaScript and HTML and CSS without the more sophisticated ceremony of ClojureScript, and it allows us to use JavaScript dependencies very easily often. And to me, it has been a nice way to just create HTML files with visualizations and visual documents, and we will see it as a practice in a moment. Right, so these are the three tools we are looking into, and what I'll do now is restart the clay layer with these three tools. So maybe we will see the different windows we have here, right? So we have three windows in a sense. Maybe I'll kind of move it. Oh, I'm not sure why Portal is allowing us to drag and drop. So maybe I'll restart again just in case. Yeah, great. So you see we have Portal and a window with the Skittle layer that we'll see in a moment, and we have a clerk window for data visualization. And let us evaluate some little piece of code so that we see that it works in all of them. So let us write this expression, 1 + 9. And when we evaluated it now, oh, I should have refreshed the clerk window. So when we evaluate it now, we see it in all windows, right? So we see it in the Portal window and in this Skittle window and in the clerk window. So that's the idea. We are evaluating code, and Clay is listening and making all relevant tools visualize the result. And here, maybe because this Skittle layer is less known, let us look inside. So what it is, it is just plain HTML. So you see, it is like a little HTML file with some ClojureScript tags. Maybe not so useful to look this way because it is not kind of laid out so comfortably, but it is, we just created and served a little HTML file with our result, which is standalone and could be shared statically as a static HTML. And so you see, I have some code examples here. Maybe we'll jump forward to one of the interesting ones. So this visual example that we rendered in all three tools is an example of nesting Vega Lite plots, plots of the Vega Lite specification, in nesting them in inside an HTML block that also has some text in it, right? So it is nesting of different visualization types, like, which is Vega Lite inside Hiccup in this case. And you see that we could evaluate this little piece of code, and it shows on all three tools we are interested in: Clerk, Skittle, and Portal. And that's the idea, that for common needs such as Vega Lite visualizations and Hiccup and things like that, we want all tools to just work for us with the same code. And the little ceremony needed is this kindly library, whatever it does. And maybe we could discuss it later, but the idea is to have this layer of saying what kind things are, so that all tools could handle them properly after some adaptation. Is it making sense? Or any thoughts about it so far?
Can I ask you something? Is Vegalite included in the library?
Could you say again?
I mean, is the Vegalite library included?
Oh yeah, thank you. That's good. Yeah, so any tool that needs to visualize Vegalite, any tool that needs to visualize Vegalite has to have it as the dependency on the client side of that tool. And typically, most Clojure visual tools like Vega and Vegalite visualizations, so they do support that. And that is not the job of Clay to make it there. The tools just support it. The problem is that each tool has its own way to say, this is a Vegalite visualization. Each tool would have just a little bit of different code on the Clojure side to say, we want it to look like Vegalite. And we want to solve that, this problem of expressing ourselves and saying, this is Vegalite. Does it make sense?
Yes, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's what it was an important comment. I think somebody else wanted to say something. Oh, no. Yeah, so, yeah, thank you for this. So, you see, we are just about expressing ourselves and saying what kind things are. Maybe I'll now close a few of the windows so that we have more room, and we will just browse through and see a bit more. So one idea is that we don't want to lose anything. We like Clerk, for example, and these amazing things that Fares told us about how Clerk can analyze the document and have this updating live complete document. And we can do it whenever we want. So now you see, here we have the Clerk view where we did visualize a single evaluated form, but we can also ask Clerk to do the whole evaluation, and that is what I did now, as one usually does with Clerk, and we have our old document back again, and we can go back and forth between the rendering of the whole document, which is the common way of using Clerk, to the rendering of a single form, which is this dynamic way that Clay offers on top of Clerk. And that is kind of part of the idea here, not to lose anything of these amazing tools such as Portal and Clerk. And yeah, so maybe we'll go back to the document and just see a few other visualization kinds we're interested in. So images, right, are interesting, and tables are this nice thing that, for example, Clerk has this dynamic data fetching that brings the table gradually. And yeah, there is this Cytoscape library for visualizing networks, graphs, which is something that we hope to support in all tools as an additional thin layer that just makes it work. Because these tools allow, for example, Clerk allows to load JavaScript dependencies dynamically. So one could extend it with additional layers like this one. And Apache eCharts is this huge library for visualizing things of many different kinds. And it is so well documented. And I've been using it in the last few days. So I think it is something nice to support in all tools. And now at the moment it works in Clerk and Skittle. And yeah, another comment maybe about delays. We like Clojure delays to render nicely. For those who care about it, delays are those things that delay evaluation, that make it not work immediately, but only when dereferenced. So we make them dereference while rendering the document. So in this way, you could have those elements in your code that do not slow down the evaluation of the namespace, because when you evaluate your whole namespace, they are not dereferenced, but when you want to render them, they do render correctly. And we also want to have nice support for unit tests and to allow for this literate testing approach. So that is one plan for the future. And yeah, so yeah, and maybe let us comment about VizCLJ, this library by Ashima Panjwani. VizCLJ is what it does is it offers a certain DSL, like a certain nice syntax for specifying plots, and we will not go into it at the moment. But what it also does is wrapping some of the relevant libraries such as tablecloth and Hanami in a way that makes things render appropriately. So it is an additional layer that makes things just play nicely with kindly and clay, so that when you have a tablecloth data set, it would just render as a table, right? As we see here, for example, right? And when you have a Hanami plot, whether you use the VizCLJ syntax to create it or just Hanami, it should just render as a plot, right? Without needing to say any more things like we want it to render as Vega. That is not needed to say, thanks to VizCLJ. And maybe one last visualization kind that I wanted to mention, and maybe in the exploration we'll dive into it further, is so-called widgets. So that is something that I am playing with on top of this Skittle layer. And what it does is providing some basic client-server interaction where one could keep the Clojure backend running, and as long it is running, the client, the browser, can ask it questions, can ask it to compute things. So, for example, here we have this. Maybe we will need the Skittle window, right? So we have this visual bar chart of rain in different days, for example. And when we click it, what it does is sending the browser interaction to the server and asking the server, please compute for me some relevant information for this interaction. And in this basic example, we're only asking the server to say which day it is that we're clicking, just to demonstrate the infrastructure. But you see, we are looking to create this tiny DSL that would allow us to specify functions that can run in the Clojure backend. So these are Clojure functions, but also we are sending this expression to the browser. This is Clojure script code, basically a basic reagent app for those who care about reagent. So it is combining a tiny reagent app with some backend functions. And here, for example, the app can call the backend function. And maybe we'll dive into it later if we have time, but the idea is to make that easy. And it is very much inspired by two other tools we were not mentioning so much. One is Goldly, and the other is Saite, two amazing Clojure visual tools. Saite maybe a few of you know, by John Anthony, has been very much documented and talked about. And Goldly is work in progress by Florian. And both of them allow very interesting ideas of client-server interaction. And this one is very much inspired by what they did. And what we could do now is just look a little bit further. And what I did here is take a certain image, an image of clay, and I created a small widget that could allow us to play with this image and click it and learn about the color that we clicked. So each time we click a point, we learn both about the color of the specific point and the average color in the region around, which is sometimes a bit different. And it is very much interesting to see, I think, that sometimes we experience colors differently, where they have different visual things around, and when we isolate them, we actually learn about what color they are. So it is something to play with, and if we have time a little bit later, then maybe we'll have some interactive session and try to develop this a bit further and play with this image. So that's the end of the demonstration. Maybe a few kind of concluding session comments. Oh, thank you. So maybe a few comments. So some things that we're looking to create soon is one of them is a certain project template that would allow somebody to just create a clay project easily, so that they can share things visually without needing to bother about setup and all that. And we want to target different target outputs. So one of them is this clerk rendering that we are seeing, but we are also looking to create easily plain HTML files that are more kind of directed toward serving blogs and web pages that can be friendly to search engines and all that. And also we want to render slides for presentations and things like that. So all of these should be easy thanks to Skittle, which allows us to just create HTML without so much trouble. And to me, it is really so much liberating, as Adi said, just to be able to create plain HTML finally. And yeah, we hope to explore it a lot in our study groups and workshops, so that we could grow this piece of tooling as kind of organically of our needs. And if anybody wishes to kind of try it out and maybe pair with me and try to look into it, I would be grateful for anybody who just wants to try it with their problems. And we want to explore these ways of expression, as we saw with the widget, and try to make them actually easier, so that it would be easier to use those e-charts, plots, and also those interactive widgets, and that will be a place for exploration. And yeah, and I hope to discuss this visual tools group and how maybe people here would like to get involved there if you wish. And also in general, I want to say that these projects, the different visual tools like Portal and Clerk, I think they're all very friendly to contributors. And if anybody is interested in contributing, in building things together, in extending existing tools, then I think I would love to discuss it and think together how to make it kind of a thing we can explore together. And that is what we do at the Visual Tools Group. We are all experimenting and trying little things. And I think it is becoming very much accessible to contribute to these projects. And yeah, any feedback, any thoughts about this would help a lot at this stage, as you're realizing. And I'm so grateful for this session. So maybe it is a good place to end this part. And if we have some time, I would love to discuss or maybe explore some data together in the little time we have. Oh yeah, and I wanted to say thank you to our friend Thomas Clark, who is kind of helping me a lot in thinking about this situation. Thomas is doing some physics research and trying these tools for his problems and really helping me so much. Yeah, so thank you.